What's up, everybody, and welcome to Tabletop Terror!
That is not dead, which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die.
Jeez, dude, shit, calm down.
Like,
Fuck.
he's invoking some elder
We're
shit.
pulling
here.
out some Necronomicon shit right now, because we're talking about Call of Cthulhu!
Oh, that spike in 100 fucking percent. Oh my fucking god, that is a spike.
But yeah, just so you guys are on the same page, this is Tabletop Terror, our special little mini-series for the month of October. For these next 4 weeks, we're going to be bringing up some of the more terrifying and spooky games in the tabletop genre.
I would say possibly the scariest subjects we've ever broached.
Oh, absolutely.
Week 4 is going to get horrifying, but
Week 4 is something we can't even say on the air.
Yeah. This is probably the tamest thing we're going to talk about.
Absolutely.
As Kay mentioned, we are going to be doing our episode on Call of Cthulhu this evening.
Yes.
And it's also like past 10s, which is the perfect time for this.
Yeah, it's almost time. Honestly, if we waited long enough, we could do a fucking Midnight Ramblers at actual midnight.
I'll fucking do a Midnight Ramblers. I don't give a
Dude,
shit.
3 episodes in one day.
I fear no evil.
We're going to have absolutely no energy.
But that's when you
that's
do
the
it.
essence of Midnight Ramblers.
Yeah.
You can just do a spoken word rendition of the original Hellboy movies.
Dude,
Guillermo
I
del
would
Toro's.
Yeah.
I would crush that. Or you can put a script in front of me and I will fucking crush it.
All right. Well, just so everyone is on the same page again, I know very little about Call of Cthulhu. Both Kay and Liam are much more well-versed than I am. Kay, I believe, has run the game a few times.
Yes.
So this is going to mostly be their rodeo. I might ask a few questions to kind of lead them on.
So Will,
yeah.
tell us everything there is about Call of Cthulhu.
Okay, so listen. So it starts off when Vegeta and Majima are fighting on the moon.
And Vegeta reveals his back tattoo.
This game actually has a special place within our specific gaming group because it's kind of known as the game that we all feel like Will should really, really like, but he just doesn't.
It's true.
I don't care about Lovecraft. I'm gonna break that seal right now.
You know what? I'm gonna let you know one thing. The game is not about the eldritch horrors. It's about investigation.
It's about investigation, and as Liam learned during a game that we recorded so that we'd have some examples to play for this particular episode, it's basically a dating sim for part of it.
Dude, oh my god. We actually had the best fucking idea. So you can use the system for basically anything.
Yeah.
So you could do a dating sim where you're dating all these different monsters.
So Monster Prom.
Monster Prom, but with eldritch horrors.
Or I can play Monster Prom and get with Vera. By the way, Monster Prom aside, Vera's the best girl. Fuck you.
You're
I will fight
fucking
anybody.
dumb.
Fuck your poly
Miranda
bullshit.
is the
Fuck your
best
Miranda
fucking
bullshit.
So
girl.
anyway, we're talking about Call of Cthulhu today.
So, Kay, what is Call of Cthulhu?
Yes, Kay, tell us.
Well, as Will mentioned Lovecraft, he was talking specifically about H.P. Lovecraft, who was an author at the turn of the 20th century, 1920s. He was pretty active, although he died quite young, who kind of was part of a movement away from Gothic horror and towards a more otherworldly alien kind of horror.
Eldritch horror.
Exactly. Less Dracula, more The Thing.
And not the Marvel The Thing.
Yeah. The Thing is in the very famous horror movie.
Yes.
That
I have never seen.
A lot of his books are genuinely scary and interesting because they kind of play off of this fear of the unknown and the ununderstandable. It's actually a very interesting historical moment because people are really starting to realize that there are things our minds just aren't programmed to understand, which Einstein had a lot of trouble with. He could not come to grips with God creating a world that man could not understand. And so it was a whole new aspect of horror. So that does make it interesting and compelling. On the other hand, H.P. Lovecraft was extremely, extremely racist, even for his time. This was a bad...
It's okay.
This was a bad dude.
That's what that meme means.
What?
Never mind.
While his work has inspired a lot of fantastic role-playing with this game, and it's inspired a lot of cool horror in general, you should feel free to ignore as much of his work as you like when you're doing this kind of game. This shouldn't be seen as a celebration of H.P. Lovecraft. It should be a celebration of being able to tell cool stories.
Yeah, I feel like you and I, though, as trained historians, are definitely able to separate. We have
Jesus
degrees.
Christ. Oh, you and I as trained historians.
We are. We have degrees.
I'm an archaeologist.
I'm an archaeologist.
So
we can separate the man from the myth. You know what I mean?
yes, yeah. I don't agree with people who try to lionize H.P. Lovecraft because he was a neurotic, racist asshole, but he wrote some interesting things.
I can like his shit. I might not like him,
But and on that level, I understand the appeal to Lovecraft because it is a very unique style that you don't really see anywhere else. The problem I kind of tend to have with quote-unquote eldritch horror things is a lot of them are fucking dumb. Like they just focus on Cthulhu as this big tentacle monster, and like he's the main thing. And from what little I do know about his works is Cthulhu really isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things.
he's slightly minor.
He's just kind of a little bitch boy. But I guess that's kind of the whole point of Call of Cthulhu is that like even as the littlest bitch boy among the elder gods, he's still world ending.
Yeah, the thing about Cthulhu that makes him scary is, well, one, he's a gigantic squid monster with dragon wings, so that's sort of scary on its own. But also, Cthulhu in the mythos is the guy who wakes everyone else up.
Yeah.
So the underlying thing in both Call of Cthulhu and the general Lovecraftian horror genre is that there are these otherworldly beings called the Great Old Ones that are from ancient prehistory. They used to rule the world. They came to the world from space, and they have all of these crazy psychic and magic powers. And looking at one can drive you insane. But they were all driven underground long ago, and they're basically trapped in this spell that they cast on themselves to keep themselves alive. Cthulhu is essentially their high priest, and once he gets set free, he can wake all of the other ones up, and they're bad news. There's one that if it wakes up, it just straight up eats the universe immediately.
Yeah.
As a thought. He's pretty scary. There's one really interesting one that I like called Nyarlathotep, which is basically kind of an Egyptian mythos kind of guy, and he's very like work from the shadows, corrupting people and driving people insane.
Is that when H.P. Lovecraft got into his weird furry phase?
I don't know enough about Lovecraft's work to break it down into phases.
There was one time where he kind of became a furry and like made it a bunch of like cat gods in Egypt.
Well, that's not unique to Lovecraft. That's kind of
No, I know that, but like they were so out of left field because like they were essentially entirely unrelated to the Great Old Ones, and he was just like, "Hey, we have cats now."
Okay. Well, let's get to the game now that we've established kind of the horror mythos here. The thing about Call of Cthulhu is that it's a game that emphasizes investigation and role playing pretty much above everything else.
Yeah, you and even to that point, you don't want to get into combat. You don't want to fight people because you are an actual human. You are very weak. A gunshot could kill you very easily.
And we'll talk about how the mechanics reinforce that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a game that encourages as much role playing as possible. What I was saying earlier about the dating sim isn't exactly a joke because in the first half of the game that we played, which I think went pretty well.
Oh, I loved it. No, it was awesome.
A lot of it, like the first half, there were no monsters. It was just them getting to know the cast of characters that were going to be involved in this particular mystery and establishing relationships with them. And in the case of Liam and our friend Henry's character, they were both interested in NPC women that they began to court over the course of the adventure.
Hell yeah.
So, would it be fair to say that Call of Cthulhu is Vampire the Masquerade-esque in that, like, the real threat comes from your fellow man rather than the monsters lurking in the darkness?
I would not say that.
Okay.
It definitely comes from the monsters lurking in the darkness, but there is often a theme of your fellow man being very intimately tied to that.
Okay.
Because one of the in the most iconic story Lovecraft ever wrote, Call of Cthulhu, which the game's named after, Cthulhu has the power to wake up the Great Old Ones, but he has to be set free.
Yeah.
And the thing that does that is a cult. Cults are very present. People who learned too much and basically become traitors to the human race and want to help the Great Old Ones, or these horrifying abominations that are trying to infiltrate the human race.
Like in ours, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We fought a reptilian race, and I won't spoil some of if we use the part where shit really starts to hit the fan. I won't spoil it, but we thought we were doing the right thing, and so like in all the signs pointed to it, and like our fellow people who we thought were our friends, we knew were probably not our friends, and then we did the things that we were 100% not supposed to do.
Nice.
And shit just hit the fan really fast, and it was really fun.
Yeah, you can definitely sometimes find out that you're working for the wrong side in a game like this, because frequently the real enemy is hidden from you in some way, either in plain sight or there's just so many different levels to this that it's hard to piece together. And that's the real focus of it: investigation. You get a bunch of different clues provided to you by your keeper, which is what they call a game master, the keeper of arcane lore, and you have to try and piece them together. Combat's usually a last resort, but there is plenty of it.
Yeah.
Some people say Call of Cthulhu has no combat. That's not true. It's just, if there is combat, you're in a dire situation.
Yeah.
The game mainly takes place in the 1920s, but there's versions for a lot of different periods, from modern day to the Roman Empire, which is called Cthulhu Invictus.
Yeah, you can go everywhere.
The Roman Empire. Yeah, it's a pretty adaptable system. It's a great game for history buffs because they can have a lot of fun looking things up and learning about the time period that they're playing in. And because it's set in the real world, we're lucky to be living in Massachusetts because I actually just visited the place where I'm going to be running my next Call of Cthulhu adventure, and just looked around and took notes and learned more about the place. And that was a real fun thing for me to do. And that's something you can do with a Call of Cthulhu game, just because you can learn so much about the area and you can, edit it to your satisfaction.
I think it's very important to note as well, we are talking about Call of Cthulhu, not to be confused with the other RPG that is also available called Trail of Cthulhu. Trail of Cthulhu is what Old Man Henderson, if you are familiar with that character.
Oh, I thought he was from Call.
He is not from Call. He is from something called Trail, which is like Call of Cthulhu, except its combat system is a little simpler and a little more, it's more dedicated towards combat.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's tied to history, but it's a game, so feel free to play around with any aspect of history that you want. There's you can include some aspects of it, make up other aspects, play down other aspects. It's a game.
I mean, we got to deal with every major historical figure of the early Americas, pretty much, or at least people who were related to them.
They were on first class in a big ocean liner, so they were hobnobbing with Hearsts and Rockefellers and people like that.
Can you believe it? A man named Pat O'Sullivan being on first class.
Of course, you're a fucking Irishman.
All right, so we can talk about what makes Call of Cthulhu Call of Cthulhu. So because as we mentioned, it's a game that revolves around investigation. It's going to require a little bit more player initiative than D&D on average, I think, because your keeper can give you all of the clues, and they can give you handouts. Handouts are a really big thing in Call of Cthulhu.
I love handouts.
Yeah, I love them too. I add them in because I don't feel like there are enough sometimes. It's nice being able to examine the clue.
You would like handouts, you fucking cunt.
I was about to say hashtag Yang Gang.
As a result, you can get all those clues, but you still have to take the initiative of trying to solve the mystery. The keeper doesn't always have the luxury of just throwing orcs at you to get you to start moving. Although they could certainly throw some mythos creatures at you, but ideally you're going to be driving things along by investigating.
Okay, so for a new player, how forgiving is this game? Obviously, to some degree, that's decided by the GM.
What do you mean by new player? Do you mean new to RPGs or new to the system?
Kind of either, because I feel like a player that's new to Call of Cthulhu is going to make similar mistakes to a player that's new to RPGs in general. Just because it's such a different kind of style.
So, I'd say that it's not really a difficult system to learn, in my opinion. And actually, it's the way that 7th edition, which is what is out right now and the one that I like, the way that it's built, it's actually kind of designed to have one person that knows a lot about the rules, the keeper, and have a bunch of players who don't necessarily need to know much about it.
Okay.
For example, the combat rules are not in the player's guide. They're only in the Keeper's Handbook. And Keepers are encouraged to phrase the way that they're running the game in a specific way that's like, don't ask for rolls. Ask, what is your character doing? And then translate all that into rolls.
It's very 7th Sea in that way as well, because you've played 7th Sea
yeah.
before.
A little bit. I don't think we ever got deep into that game.
But like, it's kind of
I get
that idea, you know what I mean?
So I think for people like me who just really like being a GM and you don't love being a player as much, that dynamic really works, but that it doesn't have to be that way. It's what I think they were trying to encourage, but you can absolutely have players that are super knowledgeable about the rules. But Call of Cthulhu, I think, is something that's actually pretty easy to just jump into.
Okay.
Because it's big on pre-generated characters, and it's big on shorter modules a lot of the time. And if you've got a keeper who knows the rules, they should be able to keep things running pretty well.
I mean,
or even if you just have one player that really knows the rules.
We cranked ours out in 2 days. Like, we finished a module in 2 days, and I'm going to be honest, I did not read the rules. I still have not read the rules and have no idea what the hell I'm doing. But when I was playing the game, the rules themselves became wicked apparent. Okay. Like roles are surprisingly simple, and like the way things work, you pick up pretty quick.
Right. Yeah. So actually, let's just get into those underlying rules. We're not going to get super deep into the rules because Call of Cthulhu does have a lot of complexities to it, but I think they're fairly easy to grasp once you've seen all of the examples. That's one thing that's really nice about 7th edition. They cram that book so full of examples that you can draw from, so that it's not just looking at the rules in theory. They actually write out, like, here's a scenario that this would be used in.
Yeah.
So the underlying system is a percentage die system. Instead of a die 20 system like in D&D, and they've used a die 20 system in past editions of this game, but right now they're using a percentage die system. All of your skills are measured by a number out of 100. And to succeed on a check, you've got to roll that value or lower on a percentage die, which will generate a number between 1 and 100. So that's fairly simple. And the keeper can decide to make it harder by saying, well, you've got to roll half of your skill because this is hard, or you've got to roll 1/5 of your skill because this is an extreme check. And you write all that stuff out ahead of time. Personally, I don't use hard or extreme checks that often, but that's a thing for you there. It also is a way that makes the game a little bit more deadly in some ways, because some GMs, and I'm not going to say if I do this or not, but because you're setting the DC in your head often, you can be a little elastic with your players when they roll really badly.
Okay.
But with Call of Cthulhu, your players already know what the DC is ahead of time, and unless you're rolling for them, you can't fudge that at all. So if they roll bad, and it's just going to be stuck with that.
It sucks.
Now, how punishing is that? Like, if you fail one check, like how screwed
Depends
are you?
on what you're doing.
Yeah, it depends on the check. So you're never really going to get more hit points because you don't level up.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, like a shotgun blast will kill you no matter how experienced you are.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean, you might be able to walk off a shotgun blast, but you're going to have to convalesce and heal from that. Getting shot is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And like, in healing isn't just like, oh, I took a long rest. It's like you actually have to spend a long time not doing anything.
Yeah. There is a way to try to avert a bad roll. So in D&D, you've got advantage. You can roll twice and take the higher result if you've done something or are in a situation that makes it more likely that you're going to succeed. In Call of Cthulhu, we have pushed rolls. Now, the way a pushed roll works is you can get a reroll if you can describe to your keeper some extra risk you're taking that both makes success more likely, but also could have real serious negative consequences. So a basic failed check might not mean that something bad happened. It could just mean that you failed to do what you tried to do. But a pushed roll will always have really negative consequences if you fail. So it adds an element of danger.
As a for instance, when I was playing Good Pat, I had a broken leg already, and I wanted to.
Were your legs okay?
My legs were not okay.
Oh, jeez.
And I had one broken leg, and I wanted to get into this door. And my lock picking didn't work. So I thought to myself, hey, this one broken leg, I can kick down a door, right? I failed the original kick, and so I pushed it, and I said that I'm just going to throw my entire body weight into this door and hope it breaks. I failed it, and I had 2 broken legs.
You just broke the leg that was already broken even worse.
Oh, is that what it was?
Just pointing in the wrong direction. We actually have a example of a pushed roll from where Dan's character, Colin, was faced with this crisis when a crane that was carrying a biplane malfunctioned and put the captain of the ship he was serving on at risk. This was a mechanic on the ship. So we'll play that clip real quick. And as you look around, you see sparks start flying from the crane that is lifting up one of these planes. The guy who's sitting in the crane, who you recognize as Shaw, someone who was recently hired on, seems to be losing control of all of the different gizmos that are needed to work this thing. And the plane is just kind of being tossed around on the deck, smashing into things, causing people to duck and wave around. And I need you to make me a quick dexterity check. Actually, make me a dodge check as the plane comes flying toward you.
That is a 13.
All right, so you hit the deck. Captain Barclay is not so lucky. He fumbled. So he is just fallen smashed by this runaway plane and lifted up into the air, hanging on for dear life to one of the wings. And he's screaming, "Someone do something about this!"
Oh, good heavens, Shaw. No one teach you how to operate the crane.
I'm not a mechanic, I'm a steward.
Oh, heavens. All right, hold on. There should be a big red lever to your left.
I don't see it.
Oh, good. I'm going to climb into the crane.
All right. You can just a cursory glance. It doesn't even take a roll. He's made a shitstorm of this. The wrong levers are pulled down. Everything is set to the wrong level. It's just an absolute shit show. You think he may have broken a few things.
Oh, good heavens, Shaw. What have you done?
He pushes his long, curly black hair out of his face and says, I don't know. I was just trying to move the thing, and I tried to compensate for the weight, and this started happening. For God's sake, get me down from here!
All right, I'll make a operate heavy machinery check to stabilize the plane.
All right.
Ooh, that is not... It's a 56 out of 40.
All right. So, I will bring up something that we can do in Call of Cthulhu called a pushed roll. So, essentially what that means is you get a reroll, but you have to describe to me how you are taking some sort of extra risk that it can have negative consequences if you fail.
Oh, good heavens, Shaw. What a mess you've made. Let's see. This isn't essential, and I'm going to rip a chunk of wires out of the control board.
Wow, that sure was a wacky situation.
Wow, him or herself. Or no, wow. Can't believe him or herself got them into that situation.
So that ended up working out for Dan. He took the risk of ripping those wires out, and instead of causing the crane to explode or killing the captain, he was able to get the crane to shut down. However, it did not work out much later on in the game when an NPC was trying to banish an otherworldly monster by reading a spell that she couldn't quite understand. And we'll play that clip.
Interrupted Constance with the thing.
Okay.
It's like, look at this. I need you to read this. There's a spell on this that can get rid of it.
There. She grabs it and looks at it. All right. I'm a little out of practice, but let's give this a shot. Would you like to roll for Constance? She has a 65 in occult.
Sure, let's go. Can I push that?
She can try to push the roll, but if she says the wrong thing, it could have unintended consequences.
You have a more than 50%.
Gosh! Boston!
Let's go. It's a 69.
Nice.
Saras! Kala! Ah! She screams as she starts sprouting fangs out of her face. As she starts gripping them, like, what is happening to me? Oh, What is this?
I don't know. It wasn't supposed to do this.
So those fangs did not go away.
Yeah, that was honestly one of the scariest parts.
Yeah, I believe it. So pushing rolls can give the game higher stakes, and they can also encourage players to get creative and take those risks, because as a longtime dungeon master, I know that players will do just about anything to get that sweet, sweet advantage.
Yeah.
So,
I will.
It's the same thing with pushing rolls.
I will turn into a whore for that dice.
So that's basically that's the way that you can avert a roll going wrong, essentially pushing it. But if you fail, it's going to have negative consequences for you if it does.
Okay.
Which you don't want.
All right. So, what, I guess, systems are in place for the storyteller to make sure people don't abuse that?
Well, you have to be able to realistically describe how you would do it.
Okay.
Obviously the keeper has total control over saying yes or no.
All right.
And you can't do it in combat. You can't say like I'm going to take a risk so I can shoot this gun a little better. You can do something in game that might make it more likely to hit. In which case the keeper might give you something called the bonus die, which is kind of like D&D's standard advantage. But pushing rolls is better because you got to straight up reroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's I would say definitely one of the biggest things is like about pushing is that you can't do it in combat. And like it's kind of funny because like when you're out of combat, which is most of the game, you kind of get used to pushing, and then you're suddenly in combat and you're like, oh, I can push this roll to shoot better, and your storyteller's like, no,
Yeah.
it just it won't happen.
I mean, from
bro.
that, it just seems like this game requires a lot more out of both the GM and the player to work.
It's definitely, I think, more for experienced players, but like you also kind of run into that same thing with Vampire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, at least in Vampire, I can kind of see a less experienced group running through it and being able to have a good time. But with this, I definitely think it definitely sounds like at least that you need the kind of wisdom to know like when something makes sense and when it doesn't, and you have to have the maturity to understand that like it could very easily blow up in your face.
Well, look, I'd say the game probably teaches you that fairly quickly, because if you're pushing all of these rolls and taking extreme risk, your character's probably going to die.
Yeah, you burn out quick.
So it's always good to have a backup character with Call of Cthulhu. Some people, one of the myths about Call of Cthulhu is that your character is always going to die no matter what, or that it's extremely likely that they will. And it's just more likely that you're going to end up with a dead character, because the things you're going after are very dangerous, and they are much more powerful than you, and you can't stand there and keep swinging your axe like in D&D. You want to be getting the fuck out of their way.
It's one of those things where you have to understand that, at least in a situation like a combat situation, it's the type of game where you have to understand that you're not playing. You're playing a hero, but you're not playing a super-powered hero. Mm-hmm. You are playing a normal person who's just trying to make the best of a bad situation almost.
So I guess that would be my next kind of question about this setting, is those normal people, how integral are they to the plot? Like, can they be replaced and, I should rephrase that. Is it like only war, where like your characters are going to die like that and you can replace them?
If you play smart, so my character, Pat, he broke his leg real bad. And at that time I was like, well, if I keep playing Pat, I'm probably going to die.
Yeah.
But I know that if I switch to another character for at least some time, I can come back to Pat if I want to. So it's one of those things where if you play smart, you won't die. Like, if you just have the wherewithal to understand that your character is vulnerable, so maybe if you see a giant monster running towards you, it's not the best idea to try to fight it, and instead run until you get yourself in a better position.
I guess what I was more hinting at is this more like a game like Only War or Dark Heresy, where you're kind of just a cog in the machine, or is it closer to Vampire, where it's a very personal experience?
It's probably down to the keeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because personally, what I live for is character-driven stories. I want the player characters to be really, really important. So for me, I definitely tied the stories to their characters. But what I essentially did is I had the NPCs that they were interacting with were potential backup characters. Mm. So it's not like if they came up with if they needed a new character, they weren't just going to show up out of nowhere. It was going to be somebody who was already in the story, and it made sense for them to be there.
Okay.
Like, for example, Liam took over playing the girl that his old character had been flirting with. That became his new character. And she had plenty of reasons to be interested in the story and plenty of connections to what was going on. So, personally, I'm the kind of keeper that would want to have it be very tied to the characters. That's definitely the way I'm doing it in my next game. Essentially, Henry's character from the last game, he's still going to be playing that character, but his character is the one who's going to be starting this quest. He's both quest giver and adventurer in some ways.
see.
So it's tied to them.
It also, I guess, depends on how your players want to play. If your players are fine with that kind of, I guess you could say, existential dread of just being a cog in the machine, then you could play it like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about those normal people, because we're going to talk about the skill-based system now, I think. So D&D is built on class specializations. You are a monk, so you will get this stuff as you level up. You're a paladin, so you'll get these abilities the stronger you get. Call of Cthulhu is built around assembling your own unique bundle of skills. Rather than leveling up and getting class bonuses and like learning new abilities because of that, you just get better at certain skills the more you use them. So if you're picking a lot of locks, you will get better at lock picking.
So it sounds a lot like RuneScape to me.
Bro, actually, 90 is the cap, or is it 99?
I think 90 is the cap.
Damn.
Without like magical.
I was gonna say, come at my 99 lockpicking, bro.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like World of Warcraft in that way too. There's like if you're training those skills up, you get.
You
better.
mean classic? Wow.
Yes, classic. Well, of course.
Please.
So you get a lot of independence with assembling that skill set. You do get an occupation, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's what you are in this world. You might be a doctor, you might be a painter, you might be a hobo. And that gives you some starting skills and tells you how to calculate the points that you have to spend on those skills. But it isn't restrictive as a class. It isn't as restrictive as a class system in D&D because you have a lot of freedom to pick which skills you want, and you can pick outside of those core occupation skills.
Like just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you don't know how to fix your car.
Yeah, exactly. That you might decide that you want to put a lot of points into that because that works into your character backstory. So there's a lot of customization there.
Okay.
So does that mean that everyone can just be good at everything if you can pick your skills? No. If anything, there's even more specialization than there is in D&D, which Liam can attest to from all of the stuff that he tried to do, only to realize that he was completely useless at that particular skill.
100%.
Yeah.
Like,
no, not 100%. You had 1%.
like my character. So my first character, Pato Schulhofen, he had 1% in lockpicking, and so I could not pick a lock. So this backup character I made, I just dumped a ton of points into lockpicking. But guess what? I still couldn't pick the fucking lock.
There was one time it worked. There was one time where you just
That's
walked
right.
up. You didn't even have to push the roll. It was just like boom, boom. All right, door
Done.
open.
We're good.
But yeah, so if you aren't in 5e, even if you aren't trained in stealth, this is in D&D. Even if you aren't trained in stealth, you have a pretty good chance of doing well if you have a high dexterity.
Yeah.
Because if you got an 18 in dexterity, even if you're not proficient in it, you're still getting a +4. In Call of Cthulhu, your skills aren't typically based on an underlying ability score. It's literally all just how trained are you in this skill. So if you don't have the points, you're probably going to fail. Most skills start, like the default is 1, meaning you have a 1% chance of rolling a success on that.
Yeah, and that makes sense that like you wouldn't know how to pick a lock if you've never done it in your life.
Yeah.
So, some of them start a little higher, like swim is at 20%, stealth is at 20 or 25%.
It's like those kind of intuitive ones. That
Yeah,
you can figure
but
out.
I think stealth is one of those ones that's you can train it up a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Like most people can kind of figure out how to work a gun, but
Yeah.
they're still not likely to be able to use it with no training.
The base handgun skill is 20. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. And you certainly can't try something complex like mechanical repair with no training.
Yeah.
They were really lucky that they had Dan's character, who was literally a mechanic, so he could help them with that. Your character has the potential to be good at, like really good at 2 or 3 things. And they will probably be dead average at a few others while being completely useless at everything else.
Yeah.
If you don't have a doctor, there will be no medicine checks because everyone's just going to be at 1%. If you don't have a mechanic, the car is not going to start. So because of this difference from D&D, specialists go from being useful to being downright necessary. There are certain things that you just cannot do if you don't have someone that's trained in this.
And I would say it does kind of require a little bit of metagaming because of that.
Yeah.
Like I understand a lot of people aren't like oh, we don't want to like specialize, and at some point I get that. Like you don't want to like kind of build your team, but on another angle, it's almost necessary.
Yeah, like the party will not work unless you have.
Yeah, like
the
you can't
pieces
have 6 meatheads in a party. I don't think you should run a Call of Cthulhu game with 6 people anyway, but you can't have 6 meatheads on one team because you will not be good at anything else except maybe hitting things.
Well, here's another problem I'm beginning to notice. So, if such intense specialization is required, how do you possibly have a party that covers all bases?
You don't.
Essentially, that's meant to encourage playing to your strengths. So, and it's also meant to encourage party diversity because what a lot of keepers will do is even if you're using pre-generated backup characters, you let somebody. I give my players 40 points of whatever they want when they pull out that backup character. That's why Liam, even though he didn't build the character in any other way because it was a pre-generated one, he put a bunch of stuff in lockpicking because that's what they needed.
I dropped 30 points in.
So, if you are facing a adventure where you're being pulled up lacking because your character just died because you didn't have anyone who could drive a car, it's probably a good idea that your next character should have that. So that's kind of the correctional swing, and it also encourages you to, all right, we don't have anyone who can fly a plane, but we have someone who can drive tanks. So maybe that's what we should steal from the armory. Or
Commander, they're flying tanks in the boat.
We can't defend against it.
We can't make any sense of all this occult lore, but one of us is really sneaky. Let's sneak into the office of someone who's already been studying this shit and steal their notes. Things like that. So it both makes the situations more dire because you have a very limited tool set, and it encourages party diversity. And I think like for the next game we're playing, they have a gangster character, a rich pilot character, and a professor character. Well, not an art dealer character. So that covers a lot of bases, and that's just with 3 people. So, but that also leaves a lot of gaps, and so that's something you just kind of have to work with. It's not exactly like in D&D where you can feasibly have everybody slot into a clear position and cover all of the bases. There are some things that you're just not going to be able to do unless you have a really big party, which I don't really encourage for Call of Cthulhu. It's better with fewer people, I think.
I would also say that it really helps foster creativity because at the end of the day, you can't do the obvious choice. Like for a lot of things, you're going to have to think outside the box because thinking inside the box would get you killed. Like one character, like with my backup character, I was using a gun to shoot at a giant flying monster that was trying to eat us. And I was just like, well, clearly this gun's not doing anything because it wasn't. But there was a flare gun and the monster had a giant eyeball. So I was like, if I can shoot into the eyeball with a flare, that might blind it for a second and be pretty useful. And I think I did it once and it was pretty useful. It got blinded for a second or two. So like you kind of have to think of ways that you can do things that would not be the always obvious choice, and that allows you to really, I guess, dig into how your character would be and how best to handle a situation.
Okay. Yeah. And it also encourages you to value the rest of your party a lot, because losing them can literally be debilitating sometimes, especially if you're in the middle of a situation that they're optimized for. And so now we can get into one of the ways that you can lose characters other than straight up death. Call of Cthulhu has sanity mechanics.
That's the big one.
Oh my fucking god.
Because so frequently the things that you are looking at or fighting or just being exposed to are enough to seriously impact your character's ability to process the world around them.
Alright, I got issues with sanity checks. I had fucking like 75 fucking sanity out of 100. That's a lot.
Okay.
I failed every fucking sanity check I ever made. Now, here's the kicker. If you are very, very... If you're very, very intelligent, you fail your sanity check, right? Then you have to make an intelligence check. The intelligence check you want to fail because you don't want to understand it. But if you're an intelligent motherfucker like I was, if you understand it, you start to lose fucking sanity.
Wait, so if you have a high stat in something, it can bite you in the ass?
Yes.
So essentially, yeah, like Liam said, after you fail a sanity roll, you're going to lose some sanity regardless.
Okay.
Irregardless.
Then you make a intelligence check to see if you really understand what you're seeing. If you succeed, that means you grasp it, and you're going to lose even more because that drives you more insane. So essentially, idiots go insane slower in Call of Cthulhu.
I see.
But that doesn't mean being an idiot's always a smart idea.
Yeah.
So, I guess, how does sanity work, really? Is it something that regenerates if you rest and, like, spend time doing
You have
whatever?
to talk to a therapist.
There are ways to regenerate your sanity.
Okay.
One of the things, Call of Cthulhu is big on understanding your character's background, and one of the things that it is you'll go through your character's background and choose one thing that is the most important thing to your character. It might be the relationship you have with a family member, or it might be a treasured heirloom, or it might be a place that you feel safe in. Going to / visiting with / holding that thing, etc., can actually help you regain your sanity, because it's something that tethers you to this world. And you have to identify that ahead of time.
Okay.
Say, like, my most important thing is this bullet casing from the Great War that I picked up, and I feel like it's a good luck charm. So you can regenerate sanity that way. You also get sanity rewards for successfully dispatching mythos creatures. So if you succeed, like in the last game that we played, when they figured out that the serpent people were there and they killed some of them, they got some of their sanity back because it's like, all right, I'm taking back control of my life. I can understand this a little bit better now, and it's not all bad.
And if you can kill it, it's not something that's unbeatable anymore.
Yes, exactly. We actually have a great example of how a relatively minor sanity check really threw off the game. Like, really fucking badly. And it just, I think it demonstrates the consequences of sanity checks really well. So, this is when Liam and Henry had a relatively minor encounter with the mythos. They had taken off from the cruise liner that they were on in two biplanes. They were in one biplane together, and they were racing Constance and Felicity, two women they'd met on the ship and that they were interested in, and they flew into a strange fog cloud.
There's a dark shadow passing underneath your ship.
Definitely too big to be Constance's ship.
Not only too big, too mobile. It's moving like an animal would.
Do I notice this?
Are you looking around?
Definitely.
All right, yeah. You guys both look down and you see what looks like a massive winged creature moving through the fog underneath you with two tails coming out of its back.
Hey, Pat buddy, just, I will be honest, I did have a bit to drink today, but you're seeing this too, right?
Look, I swear to God, this is why I said I don't like flying. What the fuck is that thing?
Oh, okay, I'm sure it's just, something distorted through the clouds. It's probably
It's
just
getting bigger.
It's probably just another plane. Fuck, we're getting out of here. I'm
All
gonna
right.
try to.
Just as you grab hold of the thing to try and to speed yourself up, the fog dissipates in a second, and the form is gone, and the shadow is gone. But you're about a foot away from the surface of the water. You thought that you were hundreds of feet in the air,
Oh no!
but you are your wheels are nearly touching the surface of the water. You have no idea how you ended up here.
I'm gonna try to go up then.
All right, I need another piloting check.
48, just in the cusp.
All right, and I need you both to make sanity rolls.
Oh boy. So how do you do that? It's just like you
You roll again. You want to get lower than your sanity.
the current sanity. Gotcha.
Yep.
My current
Nope.
80.
Can't push sanity rolls, can you?
You cannot push a
Ah,
sanity
fuck. 91 out of 8. I have 80 sanity!
Oh, Jesus.
Alright.
You're usually a sane guy,
I
but
usually am.
The stresses of the plane.
I mean, that fucked me. I don't like flying anyway.
The bird of the
That
sea.
Bird of the sea.
yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. So, you guys are going to lose some sanity.
Oh boy.
How much?
Well, that's what we're gonna find out right now.
1d10.
No.
1d.
I hope I get a 1. If you said it's 1d10.
1d6.
I'll take 1d6.
Yeah, that should be. That sounds reasonable.
That's usually like a
No,
low.
no, no. I will tell you actually how much.
It's usually some kind of die roll or a flat number,
I
depending on what
blame
it is.
you for everything that's happened.
All right, I need you both to roll a d10.
1d10. 1d10.
2.
That's a roasty toasty 8.
Get
Oh,
fucked.
shit.
That's 42 sanity.
78 sanity, baby. I am with it.
All right.
So I'm pretty spooked.
You lost more than 5 sanity, which means this is going to trigger some madness.
Oh fuck! I forgot that's how that worked.
So,
Temporary insanity.
And I'm flying a plane.
Swear to God, if you make me fucking take over this goddamn plane.
You got this, bro.
I don't!
What's the default?
It's like 1!
You got this,
I
bro.
don't!
Alright.
Oh,
So,
where is this?
I need you to make me an intelligence roll.
1,
Henry.
Henry.
Alright.
1%.
So I'm just trying to roll under my intelligence. Alright. What's the end? I'm pretty dang smart. Kinda. That's a 3.
Oh,
That's a
dude, nice!
dude, you know it.
Unfortunately, in this situation, you want to fail the roll
Well, fuck me.
because now you understand the full significance of what you just saw. Like that thing, whatever that was.
Yeah.
You moved through space and time in a way you are not supposed to be able to. And what the fuck was that thing? And and as you're grappling with that, I need you to roll another d10.
4.
4. All right.
Dude,
So
we gonna,
for the next
is Luck,
4 hours,
is Luck just gonna die?
Hey.
you are going to be suffering from flee in panic. You are compelled to get as far away as possible by whatever means available, even if it means taking the only vehicle and leaving everyone else behind.
Well, guess what vehicle I'm in right now?
Henry! Look!
I guess. Am I trying to get away from all people? Would you say?
You're trying to get away from what you just saw.
Okay.
So however you internalize what that thing does.
How much gas do we have
Yeah, that's
left?
actually a good question.
Well, that's not something you're paying attention to at the moment.
Okay,
So go ahead and role play out how this goes.
I'm just flying. I'm just flying in a direction.
Are you saying anything?
No.
All right. So
I'm just completely still
uncharacteristic silence falls in the front of the cockpit, and you fly straight past the ship, which is rapidly just becoming a dot in the distance. Constance pulls around and starts trying to follow you. You're not sure what's going on.
Look, I swear to Jesus Christ. Thunder and Jesus, look! I will slap the shit out of you! Alright, I run up and I just slap him.
Run up? You're in a plane.
Well, I do
You're
the
gonna-
equivalent of running up and slap him across the face.
Alright, I'm going to need a dexterity check.
I'm
to
good at
navigate
dexterity,
this,
baby.
Unless you've got a relevant skill that you think would apply here.
I have climb and jump.
Are you doing either of those things?
Well, would climb help me in this situation?
I'm going to say no. Let's just do raw dexterity.
Okay.
Because you're really just like reaching over trying to steady yourself.
Yep, 38. Got it.
38. Alright, so you're able to steady yourself and pull yourself into the main cockpit alongside Luck. It's a very tight fit. But you can see that his knuckles are white against the controls and has just got a million-yard stare.
Guess who's getting slapped? That guy.
Alright, so you slap him in the face. Luck, how do you react to that?
First of all, I'm driving a plane, so there's that.
Yeah.
I kind of snap out of it a little bit, but I'm still like almost shaking at this point. It's still that 1,000-yard stare, and I'm just like, again, not again, not again.
I'm gonna see if I can like touch his hand. You know that scene in Ghost
Yeah.
where he goes behind her and they start very sensually doing pottery?
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna try to do that to my boy Look here, except
very centrally try to turn the plane around.
Okay, go ahead and...
I'm going to probably try to fight him on that then.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to need a contested strength roll between the two.
Okay.
It's okay. That's a 50-50 on my end.
Alright, we're both 50.
Hey.
So wait, how do we do this exactly?
So, if he succeeds at a higher level than you do,
Okay.
then...
I got a 92, so.
I got 92!
Damn.
Alright, so the situation remains the same. Constance pulls the plane in, her plane in next to you. She says, "What the hell is going on? If he goes much further, you're not going to have enough fuel to get back to the ship."
Constance, I saw it. I saw those things. The things you were talking about.
Listen to me, Luck. Whatever you saw, you're safer back on the ship.
I'm gonna speed up.
Alright,
God damn it! You see her rummage around, and she pulls out what looks like a gun. She aims it very, very carefully, and she says, and she screams, "Pat, darling, I'm very sorry for what's about to happen."
Why am I being capped?
And she shoots him in the neck with a dart.
Oh, okay.
And I need you to make me a Constitution roll.
I'm
gonna have to fly this.
Now that we're back from the break, I just want to say, fuck sanity checks.
Yeah.
Technically, Liam, we never took a break.
So, yeah. In the end, that plane they were flying ended up at the bottom of the ocean, and Liam got that broken leg. Henry's character barely survived. So that resulted from a pretty standard sanity check. Once your sanity gets really low, and you start losing sanity, the more and more you encounter it, and the more and more that you learn about these things.
I see.
Just reading about them has sanity points taken away.
So it's like the kind of thing where you know it's hurting you, but you can't help but look deeper into it.
Yeah, exactly. Raising your Cthulhu Mythos skill lowers your maximum sanity by the same amount that it goes up. So your maximum sanity starts at 99. If you get 20% in Cthulhu Mythos, your maximum sanity is now 79. And that can keep going down until it eventually catches up to what your actual sanity is. And if your sanity gets down to like the 20 range, you probably have multiple serious personality disorders and ongoing madness problems that you're constantly facing.
And I assume once you hit 0, you're just a gibbering wreck and you're not.
Yeah.
You're probably, best case scenario, your friends find a nice place for you to spend the rest of your days screaming at the walls.
Okay.
Yeah. So sanity is one of the ways that you can be dispatched. And as we heard in that clip, once Henry failed that sanity roll, Liam was kind of on his own.
Yeah.
I had to fly a biplane, and I will have you know that Pat O'Sullivan, who has never flown, doesn't drive. Furthest he's ever been south is Jersey. He is not good at flying.
That's what we in the Force call a geez, oh man moment.
Yeah. So,
It was a bad time.
Sanity checks can be pretty fucking debilitating sometimes. Well, really all the time. You never want to have a sanity check.
But you know what? I got with Felicity in the end, so like I'm okay with
All
it.
that matters.
Listen, I got my waifu.
Nez.
Yeah. So then the other way that you can be dispatched is by combat. And Call of Cthulhu has some specific combat mechanics that really play into the overall tone of the game. It's present just the same way it is in D&D, but it's much more dangerous. A single impaling strike, which is the Call of Cthulhu version of a critical hit, from a standard pistol could probably kill the average character. So that mechanic encourages caution. There's also something that makes combat, in my opinion, a little less monotonous, and that is the fight back option. Anytime that it's hand-to-hand fighting, like with swords or with a switchblade or with iron or with brass knuckles or just your fists, when someone attacks you, they are just rolling their skill to see if they hit you. You don't have an armor class.
Okay.
But you can respond in two ways. You can either fight back or dodge. Fighting back means you're trying to punch back at them or strike back at them and deal damage to them instead of you. So that makes just deciding to attack someone a riskier move because it could result in you completely missing and them hitting you. basically the way it works is you each roll whatever your fighting skill you're using is. Maybe you've got a sword and they've got a chainsaw. You roll your sword skill, they roll their chainsaw skill. And whoever gets a higher level of success wins. And they're the one that actually deals damage. Alternatively, you can roll your dodge skill and try to get out of the way. And if you succeed there, they won't be able to hit you. Now the kicker is, with fight back, the attacker wins on a tie. So you are taking risk. Whereas with dodge, the defender wins on a tie. So dodge is safer than fighting back. But fighting back gives it an option so that combat is more deadly and also, I think, a little bit less repetitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've actually got an example of Dan's character going through a pretty standard fight scene with one of the serpent people, although he fared better than typically you would in one of these fights.
Really well.
Yeah. So we'll play that.
Oh, that's where we are.
Yes.
So, punch lizard.
As you stare into the horrifying visage of this bipedal lizard monster with claws sprouting out of its fingers and the face of Kelly kind of sloughing off, I need you to make a sanity check.
This seems pretty normal to me. Oh, nice. 35.
Okay, so you're only going to lose 1 point of sanity.
Good job, dude.
You saw him remove his face.
That's not that freaky. Like, I mean, in the war, I feel like he saw people's face get blown off.
It's
So,
true, but there
like-
wasn't usually another face underneath that one.
Yeah, it's called the skeleton K.
So Kelly's dexterity is 65. What is your dexterity?
50.
All right, so he's going to go first. You guys are right up against each other, so he is going to lunge at you. He's going to just open with a bite.
He can certainly do that.
But he misses. It was not the optimal way to open the fight because his biting is not nearly as effective as some of his other attacks, but he's panicking. So, that turns it over to you, Colin. What do you want to do? You guys are currently in the infirmary, surrounded by medical equipment, and right behind you is the stairs down to the storeroom where they keep the scuba equipment. And right behind Kelly is the locked porthole that leads to the upper deck.
I will break for the scuba equipment and grab a tank.
All right.
Good
So
plan.
you dive downward. Why don't you go ahead and give me a dexterity check to see if you can just kind of leave Kelly's area without getting swept by him.
Ooh, that's an 80.
All right. So unfortunately, you do open yourself up just a tad, and he's going to try and hit you again as you're going. That's much better. So you can either, because you're engaged with him, you can choose to either back would use your brawl skill, where basically you whip around and try and punch him in the face to stop him attacking you. Dodge, you could just try to get the heck out of the way.
I will attempt to throw an elbow behind me as I break off.
Okay.
Get the heck out of Dodge.
So you've got to succeed at a higher level than he did.
Ooh. That's a 97.
All right. Your elbow actually goes directly into his mouth, and you feel the fangs biting down on you.
It's not good.
That's not good.
It is indeed not good. You can feel poison being injected into your bloodstream, and I need you to make me an extreme con roll.
What is that?
Meaning he's got to get 1/5 of his con.
Ooh.
All right, I'm going to... is there a way to push that at all?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a 90.
Okay.
Ooh.
This is bad.
Is Colin about to die?
Quite
No
possibly.
problem.
How much health does Colin have?
14.
Okay.
Oh, Colin ain't dying. He's good.
So that's not more than half your damage in one shot, so it's not a severe wound. So you rush downward, and you start looking around. Give me a spot hidden roll to make just a quick look around to see if you can find a tank.
That's a 3.
All right, yes. You open it up, and there's just a case of air tanks here, all pressurized. So you found them.
Awesome. I grab one.
All right, you have got an air tank. Do you want to do anything with it?
I'm going to attempt to use it as a weapon against this guy.
Okay. So you're just taking some steps forward. I don't believe you're proficient in this particular kind of weapon. But you can give it a try using Brawl, I believe it'll be.
I believe that. Yeah, that was my intention.
Okay.
You got good brawl, right?
Pretty good. Decent. Not to keep rolling
Push it.
90s.
Push it.
I will loosen the valve on this tank to accelerate it.
Good plan.
I don't believe you can push combat rolls, unfortunately.
Well, then that's just a straight failure.
All right. So he ducks out of the way as you swing this at him, but you're in a stronger position now that you've got a weapon. And he advances towards you with a little bit more purpose in him. He's going to come at you with his fighting attack. He succeeds. Do you want to try and dodge or fight back?
I will attempt to fight back.
All right. He just had a normal success, so if you get a hard or extreme success, you will hit him instead of him hitting you.
17. That is a hard success.
There you go.
Dude.
All right.
Gamers.
So even as the claws come in, you bring that thing up into his face. So let's take a quick look at how exactly we should be interpreting the damage on this thing. We'll say it's basically a club.
Large clubs are a D8.
Large clubs are a D8. Damn. All right, that'll be it then.
It's extreme successes that give you critical damage, yes?
Yes. That would be what's called an impaling strike, except it wouldn't apply here because impaling strikes only happen if you're piercing something.
I believe I read that it also applies to bludgeoning, but it just maxes out the die.
Yeah, that's what it does. It's not an impaling strike.
Yeah.
10.
Oh, dude, that's
I do
real
have a
good.
damage bonus of 1d4 because of my size and strength.
Ah, okay. Wow. All right, so he lunges at you, and you just bash his skull in with this thing.
Fucking gamers.
Dude, I told you Colin was built like a tank.
So yeah, Dan came out of that alive, but he did suffer sanity penalties, and that bite that he got was no joke. He had to have that looked at.
So it's sounding like it's not like D&D where you can just kind of sleep it off. It's impossible to get through an encounter without permanent repercussions.
Pretty much. I mean, if you sustained a major wound, which is, I believe, half your health, and then you get knocked down, that's when you're dying. In D&D, it's a 3 strike system.
Yeah.
Anytime you get dropped to 0 hit points, you start making those. In Call of Cthulhu, once you are down and you have a major wound, it's 1 strike. You just keep making those rolls, and if you fail the Constitution check, you die. And then somebody can try to make a first aid check on you, and that'll make it you okay for an hour. And then if that hour passes, you're right back to making those saving throws. The only way that you can stop this is by having someone make a more advanced medicine check on you. Essentially get you to a hospital where they can give you professional care.
But I assume you can't give someone like a medicine check in the middle of a fucking alley.
No.
Okay.
Unless it's like some sort of thing that you can fix with a back alley medicine check. Like if you have like a minor cut or something and somebody's just got to put a bandage on you, that would be okay. But
Well, it
like,
could be first aid.
well, I don't think, is there a first aid kit?
Yeah. That's
Oh,
what
there
I'm
is
saying.
a first aid check.
First
Oh,
aid
okay.
is essentially stabilizing you.
I see.
That's what makes you okay for that hour.
I thought it was just rolled into one.
Yeah. And first aid can regenerate 1 hit point if it's administered to you while you're up. But it can only generate 1 hit point per wound that it's treating.
Now you mentioned while you're up, so is it possible to be dying but also be doing things?
No. If you get reduced to 0 hit points, you're on the ground, and if you've got a major wound, you are dying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about first aid can be administered if you've been shot but you're still
I see.
up. They can go over and try and patch that up, but the max you can heal for every wound that they've sustained is going to be 1 hit point.
Okay.
So if that gun dealt 7 points of damage to you, you will get 1 hit point back from a successful first aid check, but that's all they can do. You're going to need a medicine check, and you're probably going to have to convalesce for a while before you can really get back to it.
Okay. And convalescing is just taking a long.
It's like 6
Hospital
hours,
rest.
right? Or something like that.
No, it can be a matter of weeks,
Oh,
depending
okay.
on how serious the damage is. And it's not just, okay, I'm going to just lie down in this cave for a while.
You have to go to like a
guys.
hospital and
Yeah,
get
you have
looked
to
at.
be in a place where you're getting professional help.
Okay.
What was it for my broken leg then? Because I remember it wasn't that long for my broken leg that the doc was like, I need you to sit down.
Well, He had you sit down, but he was just putting a cast on it
Oh,
so that you could hobble around. He
I
didn't
see.
gain any health.
Okay, I see. I get what you mean. Now.
Yeah. So there you go. So combat can be real brutal. Sanity checks can be real brutal. And just in general, the mechanics reinforce that idea of being very, very cautious.
Yeah, you're the prey, not the predator.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And there's also mechanics for diving for cover if someone's shooting a Tommy gun at you or things like that. We don't have to get into the complexity of that.
Although one time I did make a character who straight up just capped every lizard person he saw.
You proud of yourself?
I'm wicked proud because he didn't die. He just couldn't.
Nice.
He was there just killing everything, and Henry got really upset about it because Henry was like, this shouldn't be happening. Why are you winning in these fights? And I'm like, because I am strong Russian man. I don't die.
Serpent people are probably one of the squishier kinds of Cthulhu mythos
Oh,
you
this
go up against.
this was in Henry's campaign, the first campaign Henry ran.
Was this
Yeah,
one of the
I think-
high school games we had where
Yeah.
nothing made sense?
But
Yeah.
I think that he had serpent people in that one, didn't he?
He did, but there was like a big old monster thing that wasn't a serpent person. It was like an actual monster that he got really upset that I killed in 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I don't have that document in front of me. Is there how much more you got?
I've got a few more things that I can mention. It's more just advice for running a Call of Cthulhu.
Do it, homie.
Before we get there,
Oh, never mind. Don't do it, homie.
so I guess you've run this game a few times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of like the things that you weren't impressed by? I guess the downsides of Call of Cthulhu as opposed to a different kind of game like that.
There aren't any. Excuse you.
Wowie.
Overall, I was pretty happy with the mechanics. One of the things that did sort of frustrate me is specifically that the horror tone that makes the game so good can also be very easily subverted by comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be what you're going for. Because it's closer to our real world, it's easier to joke about.
Yeah.
And people sometimes feel self-conscious about getting into really serious RP, and so it's easier to make a lot of jokes and make light of the situation. So that's the thing about Call of Cthulhu. Because it is so centered on horror, if you're not evoking that tone, then it might not be the game that you wanted it to be when you made it. Now, so you might also be going for that lighthearted comedy tone. But really, just because I think it is at such a risk for that, and it loses some of its punch if it loses that horror tone,
I see.
you want to have that conversation with your players ahead of time, just like, hey, we should all be comfortable with some serious RP. We don't want to be joking around too much. Some laughs are fine, but we want it to be serious in other places. So that's the thing that I think would probably be the most frustrating thing for me in that kind of situation, just because I feel like it's susceptible almost more than D&D is to that kind of just like, let's make this a joke.
It's kind of like Vampire, where you need to be mature to play it, I guess, or at least more mature than you would necessarily to play something like D&D.
Mm-hmm. And also sometimes it can be hard to keep track of all of the different rules scattered throughout the Keeper's Tome, because I've been GMing for so long now that I don't really read stuff cover to cover when I've got a new system. I just pick and choose around for the stuff that I feel like is going to be important. So, and I don't want to have to read something cover to cover to run it.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can just be, the first few times I ran, it was a little hard to keep track of that stuff. So that was a little frustrating as well.
I would say from a player's perspective, weirdly enough, keeping track of your skills, just because there's a lot of them, and the I don't want to call it the level up system, but the way you increase your skills is by using them. And then like you have to keep track of what skills you used throughout your last adventure so that you can raise them in the next one. And then if like, I don't know, for me, it just kind of became like a lot, especially if what I did was the quick start guide, which as a player was really helpful because it just kind of gives you numbers to use that are just like pre-generated numbers. It's really simple to plop down. But if you're not using a quick start guide and you're using the manual, it gives you a total number of points you can use, and you divide those evenly. And like keeping track of all the points that you've put in everywhere and just trying to really figure out your character can be difficult. personally, I'd say if you're going to be doing this for the first time, definitely use a quick start guide.
It definitely does. I can see where you're coming from. Where like if you have to keep track of every single thing you do, especially in a game that like from what I hear tends to favor improvisation and figuring shit out on the fly. I can see how that might quickly become an irritation.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you use a skill at all, you just put a check mark on it.
Yeah.
And it's just the one check mark. You don't have to keep track of it every time you use it. But yeah, you just have to keep track of that, and then at the end of the game, you roll a few dice to see if that skill goes up.
Okay.
And I can definitely see how that could be hard to just have the presence of mind. It's like, oh wait, I should check that off because this is the first time I've used it.
Also, that kind of does take your mind out of it. If you're like in a really intense moment and you're like doing all these sorts of things, to like keep going back and saying like, okay, what did I do here? Mm-hmm. I understand how that might get in the way.
Yeah. So it's definitely something you gotta get used to.
Okay.
And then it's funny that you mentioned the quick start guide because I have ambiguous feelings about the quick start guide. I think it's good for setting up your first character. On the other hand, I don't think it does much to teach you about character creation in Call of Cthulhu.
That's very true.
Because the quick start guide is available for free online, and it really does mean quick start. A lot of the rules for character creation are skipped. And it just does whatever it can to make sure you have your character as quickly as possible. So I value it for being able to get people into the game quick, but I also think it does a so-so job of actually teaching you how to make a character.
That's true.
So I think it's definitely worth picking up the player's guide and examining it because I really enjoy character creation in Call of Cthulhu, but it can be something that can be hard to grasp the first time round. So it's I think the quick start guide is a blessing and a curse in that way.
It's a bit like grinding through the barrens.
It's I don't know. I get where you're coming from. Where it's like it's useful when you're first starting off, but it can very quickly become a crutch if you don't have the presence of mind to move away from it.
Yeah, and the characters I think are more interesting if you make them without the quick start guide.
Yeah,
you have a lot more. You have a lot more freedom and room for creativity.
Okay.
And it also has it's got a very clear money system, so you can basically go on a fictional shopping spree for your character, figuring out all of their major possessions and things like that, because it basically gives you your assets and says you own this much amount of stuff. And it's got prices for a lot of different things, and what it doesn't have you can look up because they're in the real world.
Things you wouldn't even think of, like I had to buy underwear. I've never had to buy underwear for a D&D character, but I had to buy underwear for a Call of Cthulhu character.
Well, you don't have to buy underwear.
Yeah, but you do, Kyron. I don't want to be walking around without underwear.
If you're the kind of player that feels like they have to keep track of that, then sure.
If you're not the kind of player that doesn't think they have to keep track of that, we're not friends.
All right, well, there you go.
All right, so, I guess just to wrap this up, what tips do you have for people getting into the game?
Seth Skorkowski. He's a YouTuber, and he's super into Call of Cthulhu. He did basically a mega review of Call of Cthulhu, which was really helpful, and he does a lot of reviews for modules. So Keepers, I'd recommend looking him up, just because I like his style, and also it's a great way to find potential adventures for your players. I do heavily suggest that you use modules for Call of Cthulhu. Just because there's a lot of really great modules out there because there's a dedicated community that's making them. There's lots of Kickstarters that have gone through just making Call of Cthulhu modules. And overall, you can find a lot of high-quality stuff. And also, those modules are designed to be played in 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 sessions. Mm-hmm. And because of all the stuff that you go through in a Call of Cthulhu game, it can almost feel like a mini campaign when you finish one of those, and it's rewarding because unlike in the D&D campaigns that I've run, which you almost feel obligated to have them last for a very long time, Call of Cthulhu is really optimized for those quick 1 to 2 session things, and it doesn't feel like you're rushing through it. It feels very much like you've told a full story.
Yeah,
the one we did in 2 days was really well paced. I thought, like,
thank you.
No, it was really good. Like, It's kind of like what you said. Like, I felt more accomplished in the 2 days we did D&D than in like in the 2 days we did Call of Cthulhu than in like the however many years at this point that we've been doing. 8 years, I think it is, that we've been doing fucking D&D.
Those long campaigns are really rewarding when they're finished, but it can be hard to finish those campaigns.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So that I am not saying in any way that Call of Cthulhu is better than D&D. I love both of these systems, and I want to continue playing them forever.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on this podcast we're kind of past the point of those kind of binary distinctions, like X is better than Y.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, precisely.
Except Miranda being better than fucking...
That's bullshit. Vera's way better, and you know it. Fuck.
Liam, what recommendations do you have from a player's perspective for someone who wants to get into the game?
From a player's perspective, I would say for kind of what I said before, for new players, if it's your first character, use the quick start guide. But use the quick start guide, I would say, in tandem with the player's what do they call player's handbook?
Player's guide.
Player's guide.
Investigator's handbook.
Investigator's handbook. Use it in tandem with that. So like maybe use the rules in the quick start and the numbers just because it's going to be simpler for you at the time. But once you kind of understand the numbers a bit better, if your character like I would say make your first character like that and then make your backup character using the not quick start guide rules and kind of focusing more on using the investigator's handbook rules, just because it will make it a lot easier going down the line because you have a lot more freedom when you use the investigator's handbook, because it lets you roll for your ability scores. It allows you to like really allocate your points the way you want to allocate your points, and that gives you a lot more freedom and, like you said before, a lot more creativity. Other things would definitely be really cautious, especially if you know your keeper /DM/GM, whatever you want to call them, to be a very malicious one.
Well, if you have a malicious person running your games, you have a different problem.
That's true. But like maybe you're the type of person who likes that kind of malicious DM. Like if you're the type of player who enjoys the idea of a DM playing against you, then definitely be more cautious, and especially if you're with that type of DM. If you're not with that type of DM, if you're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, and you and your group are generally more the people who like to play laid back, I would say, still be wicked cautious. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying go guns blazing against Cthulhu himself. Yeah. But like,
you'll be insane long before
you
pull the trigger.
But more just like, kind of. This is gonna sound odd, but play with a very stressful relaxation. So you want to be stressed out the entire time, but you also want to be super relaxed, because you need the good stress. People say there's two types of stress. You
it's
need
like
to
watching a good thriller, a good horror.
Yes, exactly. Like you want to be on the edge of your seat, but you also still want to remind yourself that it's a game. Mm-hmm. And like I do with, like we always say on this podcast, it's a game. You want to have fun. So like, be on the edge of your seat, be cautious, but allow yourself kind of those moments of
weakness, I guess.
Weakness, or maybe comedic effect, I guess, but not in like the ha 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 that's so funny kind of way. More like
just be able to separate yourself from the character you're playing, I guess.
Yeah. Like take a moment every, like, depending on how long your sessions run. Our sessions run pretty long, but if you have wicked long sessions, maybe take like a moment every hour and just kind of like, if it's not your turn, just kind of pull yourself out of the game for a second, give yourself that little bit of time to relax, and then get back into character and kind of build yourself up again. Because the game's designed to be so role play heavy, you're gonna burn yourself out pretty quick if you are constantly in character.
Yeah.
Especially if you guys are taking it wicked seriously and you guys don't have a lot of like lighthearted moments, which is fine. If you don't want lighthearted moments, that's fine. But you're gonna burn yourself out acting like a fucking Irishman in the 1920s stranded on a ship because he's afraid of water and flying and was forced to fly. It's embarrassing.
That just sounds like just good advice in general.
Don't put yourself in that situation. And alongside that note he made about role playing, it is a very heavy role playing game. A lot of your time is going to be spent chasing shadows, looking things up in museums and libraries, interrogating witnesses, things like that. All of that requires player initiative. Don't be afraid to go out and do some real investigating, because your keeper is going to need that. And don't be afraid about guessing wrong or making the wrong call or anything like that, because Liam did that about 5 times in our game. He came to like 8 different erroneous conclusions about what was really going on that ship. But in the end, they still figured it out. And your keeper is going to be working with you to make this mystery, like, hopefully not impossible. So chase down any lead you think is there, because your keeper's going to enjoy filling that in for you.
I would say 100% you need to be... You don't need to be, but, like, open up your inner Sherlock Holmes and, like, make the most fucking outlandish guesses you possibly can, because I'm going to be real with you. It's Call of Cthulhu. There's a lot of crazy shit that might happen. And so, like, I came up with some ridiculous theories. I absolutely did. My worst theory was that I decided we should throw this idol into the water. And guess what? We did that, and a giant monster appeared and tried to kill us. So, like, take those theories, take those risks, be the crazy investigator. And one more thing about that, actually, just in character creation. You're called investigators. That doesn't mean you need to be an investigator. What I mean by that is that in the game, you have occupations. Not everybody needs to be a police officer or a detective or a private eye or something like that. Like, you can be a fucking art collector. And, hey, guess what? You know about all this shit now, and you know you need to stop it.
Yeah, my girlfriend played a movie actress at one time when we played Call of Cthulhu, and that seems like the last person who should be investigating this kind of shit.
But there they are.
All of the connections that she had were absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Because the people that she was playing with, they had no credit rating, and they would never have been able to get into the high-class establishments that they had to investigate without her. So, really, don't be afraid to pick something that doesn't necessarily seem like it would fit.
Yeah.
Because hopefully your keeper's going to find a way to make it fit.
I mean, Henry just played an alcoholic pilot.
Yeah.
Ex-pirate.
he used to be a pirate, but he stopped his swashbuckling ways. But like, and another advice just on roleplay is if you're gonna get into the game, don't be afraid to be your character. Like and what I mean by that is kind of a twofold thing. First off, don't be afraid to roleplay. Like, you're with your friends. Nobody there is gonna beat you for roleplaying. Presumably you're all there to have fun.
Well, that's just a hurdle that's very hard to get over with these kinds of games in general.
I mean, it is, but it's an important hurdle that, like, it kind of needs to be said. Like if your friends make fun of you for wanting to roleplay, you're probably with the wrong group. And that's fine. They can still be your friends, but they might not be your RPG friends. And, like, that's okay.
And honestly, this game sounds a little bit easier than a lot of games to get into, because you're all playing as real people. Well, not real people, but you know what I mean. People grounded in reality.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to play Jim the Banker than it is to play Shin Megami Tensei King of the Elves.
What an original character, well.
You know what I mean.
But my other piece of advice that goes along with that is, if you make a character and you're like, oh man, like I'm not a police officer, but my character was a detective in New York City. I know nothing about that. I know nothing about what it takes to be a detective in New York City, especially in the 1920s as an Irishman. Like, I don't know that. But just because I don't know that doesn't mean I can't play that type of character. You know what I mean? Like,
also, again, they're grounded in reality, so you can very easily learn what it was like to be a cop in the 20s.
Like, and that's another thing. Even in character creation, there's still that chance for, like, you can figure out what type of thing you are. Like, I was a detective and my family was part of the Irish mob in Albany. Like, that was my entire thing. And, like, again, I don't know anything about that, but I know basics of what a lot of those things are, so I can figure out what my character would be like.
Yeah. So as we're getting towards what I think we're probably going to wrap it soon, I actually want to ask you a question, Will. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. You're not compelled to answer this question.
You are compelled to answer the question.
I am the question.
I will beat your knees in.
After hearing all the information that we've given in, do you feel like you're more or less likely to want to try this game?
2 things. 1, I'm actually wicked into this now.
Yeah! Dude! We got him!
I knew it!
Yes!
I knew it!
While you were talking, I was coming up with a character.
Bro! We got him!
Secondly, I'm not much of a LARPer. As in, I don't do it at all. But this game seems like it would be super fucking fun to LARP.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, Tabletop Trainwreck audience, you guys are here for a momentous event.
For years,
I never changed my mind.
He has hated cock for years.
I'm ready to accept your cock now.
Accept the cock.
It has for such a long time been something that we've been like, Will should love this. Why doesn't he?
And literally the entire time we were playing as we were recording, there's a lot of times in the recording that we're like, why doesn't Will like this game? Like,
I guess it really just comes down to like Cthulhu being such a meme now.
but here's the thing, and here's like one more thing I really think needs to drive part of the point home. I know we want to wrap up, but
It's fine.
But Cthulhu doesn't have to be the big bad.
Yeah.
There's so much in Lovecraft, and not even just like the eldritch horrors. You can have zombies in Call of Cthulhu. You can have, pretty sure there's vampires. I'm pretty sure there's mythical creatures that aren't just Cthulhu based. So part of the reason, I personally, the Call of Cthulhu system is my favorite system out of any system that I've played. Just because I think it is very, very simple in a way, but also very complex because there's just a lot you can do. And it is honestly so adaptable. Mm-hmm. You can do it in so many different times and places and different ways. You could take the Call of Cthulhu system, change some words, and put it in a fantasy setting and say, okay, go for it.
Yeah.
And like that's part of the reason I love it. And like just because it's called Call of Cthulhu doesn't mean it needs to be Cthulhu or even H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, and even if it is Cthulhu-centered, one of the things that makes it compelling and what made H.P. Lovecraft's stories compelling, even though, again, God, they have not aged well. They were not born well. Like, there was...
a lot of those, like, old writers
in the 1920s.
But he's, like, he's bad for his time. Like, other people during his time were looking at him and like, really?
Like, dude, chill.
like come on, man.
So, but one of the things that makes like the Call of Cthulhu compelling, that is the most iconic story. Cthulhu is one of the most iconic monsters in pretty much all of literature at this point. And Cthulhu is on screen, in quotes, for like 3 pages in Call of Cthulhu. He's hardly ever mentioned. The thing that makes Call of Cthulhu scary and compelling is this person chasing down all of these different leads as to what is this weird cult and why are they worshiping this Cthulhu thing. Yeah. So that's really what drives Call of Cthulhu, investigation. And that's why it's an investigation game, because what made Lovecraft's stories compelling was starting with something that you have no chance of understanding and learning very, very slowly that you were not meant to understand it.
I think that's a very good way to end that. So,
fantastic.
So
this has been Tabletop Trainwreck with...
No. Tabletop.
Well, I was going to say Tabletop Trainwreck with week 1 of Tabletop Terror.
Oh, I'm so... Fuck.
We're going to be...
Fuck!
Yeah, we're going to be amping up the spook factor a bit next week when we talk about Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Which we're hoping to get you back 4K, right?
I would very much like to be there for it.
Ooh.
And it's only going to get worse from there. So we hope to see you next week.
Yes.
You can find us on iTunes, Apple, Podbean.com, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and also YouTube. I keep forgetting YouTube. And if you'd like to contact us at all, give us death threats, well wishes,
anything
complain about our description of Call of Cthulhu, even if you just want to tell us a cool story. We'd actually be really interested.
If you guys send us enough stories, we will read your stories on the air. We can
I'd
make that a whole episode.
Yeah. So
send us your fucking stories.
You can do that at tabletoptrainwreck@gmail.com.
I will break Will's knees if you don't tell us stories.
All lowercase. One word. No spaces, no nothing.
No nothing. No underscores.
I have been your caper of Arcane Moore.
Just cut it. We're done.
Fuck you.